I never thought one ordinary night would turn into something I would never be able to forget. It started quietly, almost too quietly, like the world had decided to pause for a moment without telling me why. My dad was out of town, as usual, busy with work that always seemed more important than anything else. My stepmom had left earlier that day to visit her sister. That meant it was just me and Liana in the house. Liana, my stepsister, someone I had lived with for years but never truly understood. We weren't enemies, but we weren't close either. We existed in the same space, shared the same meals sometimes, but our lives were separate in ways that words could never explain. That night, I came home around 10:30. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone before unlocking the door. I was tired, both physically and mentally, and all I wanted was to eat something and go to bed. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The house was silent, but not in a normal way. It felt heavy, like the silence itself was hiding something. The living room lights were off, but the kitchen light was on. That wasn't unusual. Liana often stayed up late, either on her phone or making something to eat. I dropped my keys on the table and called out her name casually, expecting a normal response, but there was nothing. No voice, no movement, nothing at all. I stood there for a moment, listening. That's when I heard it. A faint sound, almost like a whisper, or maybe something moving very slowly. I couldn't explain why, but that sound made my chest tighten. I started walking toward the kitchen, each step slower than the last. I didn't want to make noise. I didn't want to interrupt whatever was happening. But as I got closer, the sound stopped completely. That sudden silence was worse than anything I had heard before. I called her name again, this time louder, but still there was no answer. Now it didn't feel normal anymore. It felt wrong. I stepped into the kitchen and looked around. Everything looked the same, but something was missing. Then I noticed it. The back door was slightly open. Cold air was coming in, brushing against my face, and the curtains were moving gently with the wind. I walked closer to the door, my heartbeat getting louder with every step. I pushed it open and looked outside. The backyard was dark and empty. There was no one there. No movement, no sound, nothing that could explain what I had just heard. I stepped outside, calling her name again, but the darkness gave me no answer. When I came back inside, I noticed something else. A glass of water was sitting on the counter. It was half full. I knew that hadn't been there before. Next to it was her phone. The screen was still on, but no one was around. That's when the feeling hit me again, stronger this time. Something had happened in this house, something I didn't understand yet. I picked up her phone, hesitating for a moment before looking at the screen. There was a message open. I didn't mean to read it, but my eyes moved before I could stop them. It was just one line, but it was enough to change everything. It said, "He knows. We need to leave now." My hands froze. My mind started racing. Who was we? And what did they mean by "he knows"? I looked around the kitchen again, trying to make sense of it all, but nothing added up. The silence, the open door, the missing person, the message. It all felt connected, but I couldn't see how. I stood there for what felt like forever, holding her phone, staring at that message, trying to understand what was happening. And then I heard it again. A sound, this time from upstairs. A slow, careful step. I wasn't alone in that house, and in that moment I realized something that made my heart sink. Whatever was going on, whatever Liana was involved in, it was far bigger than I had imagined. And somehow, without even knowing how, I was already a part of it. I stood there in the kitchen, holding Liana's phone, staring at that message like it was about to explain everything on its own. "He knows. We need to leave now." The words kept repeating in my head, over and over, as if they were trying to force me to understand something I wasn't ready to see. Then I heard it again, a slow, careful sound, a footstep from upstairs. Every part of my body froze. For a moment, I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just the house settling, or the wind, or anything that could make sense of what I was hearing. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Someone was upstairs, and it wasn't supposed to be. I slowly placed the phone back on the counter, my hands slightly shaking. My heartbeat was so loud that it felt like it was echoing through the entire house. I didn't want to move, but I couldn't just stand there either. Something was wrong, and every second I stayed still, it felt like I was getting closer to something I didn't understand. I stepped out of the kitchen and into the hallway, the staircase. I stepped out of the kitchen and into the hallway. The staircase stood in front of me, dark and silent. The light upstairs was off, which made everything feel even more unsettling. I stared at the stairs for a few seconds, trying to decide what to do. Call someone, leave the house, pretend none of this was happening. But then one thought pushed everything else aside. What if Liana was in trouble? That was enough. I started walking toward the stairs, slowly, carefully, trying not to make any noise. Each step creaked under my weight, and every creak made my chest tighten even more. I stopped halfway up, listening. Silence. Complete silence. I took a deep breath and kept going. When I reached the top, the hallway stretched out in front of me. The doors to the rooms were closed except for one, Liana's room. The door was slightly open. A faint light was coming from inside. My throat went dry. Liana? I called out softly. No answer. I moved closer to the door, my steps slow and cautious. My mind was racing, trying to prepare for what I might see, but nothing felt like enough. I reached the door and gently pushed it open. The room was empty, the light was on, the bed was unmade, and her things were scattered around like she had left in a hurry. Her wardrobe door was open and a few hangers were lying on the floor. It looked like she had been packing or running. I stepped inside, looking around, trying to piece everything together. That's when I noticed something on the bed. A bag, half open, clothes stuffed inside, and on top of it, a piece of paper. I picked it up slowly. It wasn't addressed to me. There was no name on it, just a few lines written in a hurry. I didn't want it to go this far. We should have stopped earlier. If he finds out everything, it's over. My chest tightened as I read it. Everything? What everything? I looked around the room again, my eyes searching for anything that could explain what was happening. That's when I noticed her laptop on the desk. It was still on. The screen was glowing. I hesitated for a moment, then walked over and looked at it. There was a video paused on the screen. Security footage. My breath caught in my throat. It was our house, the kitchen, from earlier that night. I slowly pressed play. The footage started moving. There was Liana standing in the kitchen, looking nervous. She kept glancing toward the door like she was waiting for someone. Then, a few seconds later, the back door opened. Someone walked in. A man. I couldn't see his face clearly at first, but as he stepped into the light, my stomach dropped. I knew him. I had seen him before, but I couldn't place where. They started talking, their voices silent in the footage, but their body language said everything. Urgent, tense, like they were arguing or planning something serious. Then suddenly, Liana turned her head toward the camera, toward me, or at least it felt like she was looking straight at me through the screen. And then everything changed. The man grabbed her arm, not aggressively but firmly, like he was forcing her to make a decision. She hesitated for a second, then nodded, and both of them walked toward the back door. The same door I found open. The same moment I walked into the house. The video ended. My hands were shaking now. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. Something serious was going on, something that involved Liana, something that she was trying to hide, and somehow I had just walked right into the middle of it. I stepped back from the desk, my mind racing faster than ever. I needed answers. I needed to know who that man was and what they were planning. But more than that, I needed to understand why she left her phone behind. That didn't make sense. If she was running, she wouldn't leave her phone. Unless